I think this conversation presents an interesting challenge for me as an interviewer and a conversationalist of um, I like to think about ordering questions, and uh, it's not obvious to me how to order the questions that I really want to ask, and um, especially sort of this next sequence. And it's like I want to get a sense of your internal map of your body, and like go deeper into some of the stories around specific parts. And I could imagine doing it chronologically, like we started with your back, and I could imagine doing it anatomically, like in some, left to right, top to bottom type order. Um, but I think the order that feels best actually is sort of lady's choice. And what I would love for you to do is maybe pick a part of your body that's been one of these kind of hot spots that you've paid attention to, and maybe, yeah, dive into it as deeply as you can and just share the history of that part and what that's been like for you.
Um, what if I don't know how localized you meant by hotspot, but could I do one that's a little bit like upper body, lower body,
Sure.
like upper body versus lower body? So it's kind of a pretty big one, but I would say, um, let's see, do I want to talk about that one? I always want to be like a little bit, I want to be intentional with how I talk about details of certain things. Yeah. Uh, So this one is like really fresh because there was a lot of recent insight into it, but and then it just had me wondering about this wider pattern, and I haven't even put this into words yet or said it to anybody, but it might be fun to flesh out a little bit, and then maybe, yeah, maybe as I talk about it, another more specific example will come up. But like, so I've had a lot of stuff going on in my legs that I've noticed for a long time. Like there's something weird and super dense going on with my calves. I feel it in my hamstrings also, and it's really affects my flexibility. So I would feel that, for example, if I like hinge at the waist and touch my toe, I mean, I still have pretty good flexibility, but like, ooh, here's how it really has come up. I couldn't really do I don't really do massage anymore, but when I was doing massage, it really affected my ability to do a massage lunge, which is really important. It's one of the main stances, and it's really important in massage to get the mechanics right, or else you are hurting yourself. And I was always hurting my lower back a little bit when I did massages, and I couldn't ever quite figure out like what I was doing wrong. And then I worked at a place that had some really talented therapists, and one time we just did a session messing around, like three of us who worked there. It's really fun if you get three like body workers together to like have one person get on the table and then the other two people can just like mess around with them and like show each other things. And it's always tends to be a really nice sort of learning space for body work. So we were doing something like that, and I was asking them like, can you guys take a look at my, or the person standing at least, can you take a look at my body mechanics and see what you think is going on? And she looked and right away was like, oh, you're not lunging deep enough. It was like so obvious to her. And I was like, I had been doing massage for so long at that point. I was like, I can't believe no one has like pointed this out to me before. That's um it seemed obvious when she said it, but she was like, yeah, because you're not lunging deep enough, you're having to like hinge a little bit more at your waist, and that's why your low back's bothering you. And I realized that I couldn't lunge deeper because of my calf flexibility. So I was kind of like, well, where does that leave me with massage? I mean, I knew that I could over time develop my calf flexibility, but it didn't feel like I could go home and do some yoga, some like calf stretches, and then that would fix it. Like nothing in my body is that simple. And like I think I'm past the point of just responding to like normal body interventions like that. Like maybe I'll get a little bit of mileage out of it, but everything for me just seems to be this like incredibly imaginal, emotional, archetypal story that's playing out. So it's like maybe my calves will become more flexible next week, or maybe it'll be 10 years from now and I don't feel like I can really have much say in that. So I also don't, my sense with it is that it's not muscular in my calves, or it's not just muscular. My sense is that it's fascial, and yeah, I don't know of like fascial flexibility interventions as much as muscular stuff. That stuff is just more popular. But anyway, so I have this stuff in my calves and my legs in general that will like flare up sometimes, all the way up into my hips. And it's like I mentioned, the calf stuff is so dense feeling. It's like, again, I don't have a lot of awareness into what's there. It just doesn't feel like it's time yet. And so it's this very sort of like dark, heavy feeling in terms of my internal awareness there. I don't feel like I know my calves super well. I don't feel like I have a sense of what they are doing in the world and what they want out of life. And um, I have like a lot of ankle stuff from playing soccer and rolling my ankles a lot, like spraining my ankles a lot, and that sort of cascades. So the whole lower body project is a whole huge project that I think I think one day, I really think one day that like a lot of my um I think my flat feet won't be so flat anymore. I think my ankles will be more flexible. I think my right hip, which is the reason, or not the, like it's a big thing in why I can't sit comfortably. I think all of this will open up eventually, but I think it's a really long-term project. Okay, so there's that piece of that. Recently, what was the really big insight for me? I wouldn't even be able to tell really when that stuff would particularly flare up what was going on with it. Like usually if certain tissues are in pain, I can kind of go home and do my process around what's going on here and how can I work with it. Um, and I have various tools in my toolkit for how I do that. But with the calf stuff, like maybe it would be a conversation that I had with somebody and that stuff would flare up really heavily and I just wouldn't really feel like I could do anything about it. And I kind of would just have to wait for that to pass, and I would try to support it and do some of my movement stuff or meditative stuff, and just couldn't really like move towards resolution with it. So recently I started, not related to body stuff, I started getting interested in um planetary energies. Like I've been getting interested in astrology and learning about astrology, and I hear astrologers talk about praying to the planets directly and like to a specific planet with a specific intention or focus. And I do a lot of deity practice, so that um, intrigued me. And so I have experience connecting with specific spirits and energies, but not planetary ones. So it's sort of a new thing that I was going to try. And there are specific days and times of day when you can, that are particularly auspicious for connecting with certain planetary energies. So I actually had an intuition that I should try connecting with Mars energy. Like I was doing an astrology consultation with somebody and we were talking about Mars in my chart, and something happened very prominently in my awareness. It was actually like all of a sudden I just wanted to cry, and I wasn't sure why. And I mentioned to the person, the astrologer, I was like, oh, that was really emotional. Not sure what that is. She was like, do you want to talk about it? And my intuition was like, no, this is a later thing. Figure this out later. And she was like, yeah, maybe spend some time with Mars. Maybe that'll. And when she said that, I again just had an intuition like, okay, yeah, that's the thing. So I using this like guide that an astrologer wrote and put out about planetary prayer specifics, I sort of set up the container for an auspicious time to connect with Mars, day, time of day, other things to do to sort of cultivate that container. And it was so interesting. It was like just this incredibly informative experience in terms of this energy that I felt from Mars when I specifically intended on connecting with Mars. I'm trying to think about how I want to explain this. It's like I have all of these frameworks that have been building in these maps that I'm describing to you that are like very somatic and very emotional. And those really blend together, but often with emotional stuff, one of the things that I'm doing is getting really good and really precise with recognizing and naming individual energy signatures. And not just, I guess, naming and recognizing them in service of not being inside of them without realizing it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I can kind of like, whether it's with me or with the client that I'm working with, I can notice that that energy is there without accidentally getting stuck inside of it. And so before I go into what the Mars energy felt like, I would just say that I had this whole relationship to the idea of, or not the idea of, but relationship to anger and like where I was in my process with processing anger, relating to other people's anger, relating to my own anger, how much of my own anger I had processed, how much was still in my body. What I took the anger and energy signature to be, how I expressed anger, yeah, how I experience anger. And then that just like totally got updated and shifted things around when I connected with this Mars energy. So what happened when I like started the prayer and opened the container was I immediately felt this like huge blast of energy. It was really like Mars just showed up and sat down at the table across from me, like energetic, or like even more than that, like more than I would feel the energy of a person across from me. It was like, so it was just this big like burst that came up and was like, "Hi Jane, you called," basically. And part of why I think that that showed up so prominently is because it didn't feel like me. It felt like a separate energy, whereas like I have since connected with other planetary energies like Mercury. I did one of these with Mercury and it was kind of like, oh, there's Jane. That's just Jane. I know that energy. It's like another Jane showing up, or like part of Jane, a big part of Jane. Whereas the Mars one was like this other being. And I got so much insight from that interaction because by having it there in such a big dosage too, like there's something energetically where adding a bunch of energy to the system gives all this new momentum, and like stuff that maybe felt more subtle before gets like lit up more. Like I think this is part of the reason why energy work and body work can be so effective, is because you're adding all of this energy of the practitioner to the system and things light up way more. And so I'm like self-conscious about how long this story has become, but it really, the point of it is how much it sort of updated my system about what anger is and what action is, and how closely related those two energies are. And like maybe the signature to me of this Mars energy included both of those things. And I had never felt such a strong connection between an anger energy and an action energy. Like just a purely, not an angry action, but just purely like action, movement, decisiveness, boldness, not hurrying, but like, what's that thing that I've heard you like, don't rush, don't hesitate. And then the other really interesting thing about that interaction with that energy was the way that my body responded and my tissues responded. It was like all of that stuff that I mentioned in my lower body, my calves, through my thighs and into my hips, really responded to the presence of that energy, and they responded with the type of pain and flare up that I was talking about before. So it was like a shutting down in response to that energy. But there was also an attraction to the energy. It was almost like a it's a little embarrassing to say, it was almost like a sexual attraction. So it was like shutting down and sexual attraction, but like in a um sort of like a submissive thing, like a hierarchical thing. It was like attracted to it, but thinking it was like it knew better than me. It knew what to do and I didn't know what to do. It was the leader, I was the follower, that kind of thing. Um, and so I felt like whether I was the one initiating all of these stages of the insights or whatever, or whether it was the, Mars was working with me or we were working together or whatever, like I got to feel, oh, this is what those tissues in my body are responding to. It's like a response to this type of fiery, decisive, bold action. And the response is to shut down, like stop moving, go lay down, collapse, not be a part of it, get away from it. And then I could also really feel into how that affects my ability to take action, because I had never noticed, with collapse comes the absence of energy. I mean, the absence of action. It's like I had never noticed that the anger and the action energy are so closely tied before. Like I knew that anger, the expression of anger involved action, but I guess I didn't. Now it feels more to me like all action energies are related to anger energies. Just a little like different flavors or something of a really similar energy. And so then the attraction part, I just like really let myself feel into that, like just, went for it, like didn't judge myself, didn't hold back, like just let myself feel all of that completely. And then, I think of what a lot of attraction is like a desire to embody that energy of that being or the energy itself or whatever it is, the thing that we're attracted to. It's like some part of myself that wants to come online, and that's where the attraction is coming from. So I could feel into what would it be like to, I felt into the fear first, kind of felt through that, and then the attraction and the like, what's it like to embody that energy? Sort of, again, because there was such a big blast of it, that was a little easier to just be like, let myself allow this energy into me in a way of like stepping into it, sort of choosing it instead of choosing the collapse resistance action. And it felt so good and so like, wow, I'm missing this a lot, and this is something that really holds me back day to day, and this is part of why I'm tired a lot and not getting as much done as I would like, even though I have things I really want to do and I'm excited to do. And my legs have felt so much better since then. It was like this huge puzzle piece to that puzzle of what was going on in those tissues that I wasn't aware of, and what was going on in certain relationships with certain people that like have a lot of that Mars energy, like whether it comes out as fiery anger or whether it just comes out as like really bold action or something. There was a way that I would like, it was like a lot for me, but also, I just like fell into an energetic thing where like they were the leader and I would follow them. And so there was this whole like beautiful cycle and integration process that happened. And I don't know that I would have gotten that in just my sort of like typical somatic emotional processes. That was this really wonderful gift of the astrological context and the planetary energy context that brought all of that together for me. And then the thing I mentioned at the beginning of this long ass story is that like there's something I've been wondering as I've been integrating that about this upper body, lower body thing. Like I feel like this is a pretty common thing with people where their upper bodies are a little more just like, I have this heart energy, I have this desire, I'm ready, like my mind is ready, there's a plan, let's fucking go. And the lower body is like, no, this isn't safe. I want to stay home. I want to stay in bed. I want to like, this seems true to me with a lot of people, that there's more heaviness and hesitation, and the upper body is moving faster than the lower body, is my sense with quite a few people. And what I've been wondering about is like, I wonder if this is how some people get into really like ungrounded manic kinds of energies, is when they have this upper body lower body disconnect, where the lower body has more concern for safety that's not being addressed, or more collapse happening in the lower body, and the upper body is just like super ready to go and ready for action. And when the upper body is moving faster than the lower body, whether that's the entire upper body or even just gets to be like maybe the head, the ideas, the intellect is like driving some action. I'm wondering if that is part of what turns into this heady, hypomanic type of energy that I imagine people listening to this will be somewhat familiar with.